Despite the fact that I haven't played it now for a few years, Diablo 2 is still, I would say, one of my top games of all time. I absolutely loved this one when it came out, and for years afterwards as well. It was simple and yet so satisfying, so addictive, that I had to put many, many hundreds of hours into it before I eventually moved on to other things. And yes, I enjoyed Diablo 3, I played that a lot as well and own it on multiple platforms, but for me, Diablo is all about Diablo 2. No surprise then, once I'd heard that a mod was available called the Curse of Tristram, which is basically a remastered version of Diablo 2, I was definitely intrigued to have a look at it and try it out for myself. The mod itself, which is called the Curse of Tristram, is a StarCraft 2 mod created by eGod. And I will say up front, it's not a completed mod. This is technically the public test realm, though anybody can go onto StarCraft 2, download the game and play this mod. The good thing is that StarCraft 2 recently went free to play. I can't remember exactly how long ago, but a few months ago I think. And so you don't have to pay anything, you can literally download the game and you will have access to this mod if you go to the arcade mode. So if you haven't already, you can download the Battle.net client, which will give you access to StarCraft 2, which is where this mod is launched from. And as you can see, there are 3 difficulty modes. The original Diablo 2 game also had 3 difficulties, normal, nightmare and hell. And for this mod, the difficulties are normal, heroic and mythic. Oh, by the way guys, if you're playing this particular version of the game, then just a heads up, I did see on the Facebook page that if you delete slot 2 character, it will actually wipe off the rest of the characters that you've created as well. Now, for some reason that never happened to me, but there is a warning about it, so maybe it's been hotfixed, I'm not sure, but just a heads up about that. So all of the Diablo 2 character classes are present, as you can see, and they all have some art for them as well, which is pretty decent. A lot of the interface from the original Diablo 2 game, such as for the skills, as you can see here, has just been, by the looks of it, imported across, so it will all feel very familiar in that regard. But you can also see here there's a lot of work still to be done, so not all of these skills are currently available. Now, as you're going to see, in fact, as we play through the first 20 minutes or so of the game, there is still a lot of work to be done. And there are going to be bugs, there are going to be issues, but there's also, I think here, the foundations of what could potentially be a fantastic tribute to the original Diablo 2, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where the mod goes from here. So here we are in the iconic Rogue encampment, and that beautiful Tristram music theme playing that every Diablo fan knows and recognises, of course. And you're going to see immediately, as I mentioned, that the interface is heavily based on the original game. Obviously this is all built in the StarCraft 2 engine, but considering this is a one-man project, the attention to detail here is absolutely superb, it really is. Now, if you have played a lot of Diablo recently, especially Diablo 2, then you are going to notice that the controls are a little bit different in this game. Now, they are mostly the same, and you basically just use the mouse to do everything. There's no question about that. It's got that same Diablo vibe to it. But there are a few differences, and some of those perhaps are bugs as well, but I'll talk a little bit about them as we get on here. But you are going to be using the right mouse button to click and move around the map as you would in the original game. However, one thing I have noticed, and it was a little bit jarring, I have to confess, is that the left mouse button click no longer moves you to the enemy when you click them, or to a treasure chest, or to loot, or whatever it is that you are clicking on. So if you want to attack an enemy, for example, in melee range, you are going to have to manually use the right mouse button to get right in the face of the enemy before using the left mouse button to attack them. Because if you just try and use the left mouse button, you're going to stand exactly where you are, you're going to remain where you are, and you'll just be attacking air. So that does take quite a bit of getting used to, and all throughout this video you're going to see me doing that, because I'm so used to the Diablo controls of left clicking on an enemy and the character automatically walking or running to them without, you know, attacking before it gets to them. Speaking of running, there is no stamina bar at all to be found in the mod, which is something that makes me happy actually. It was always the bane of my existence to keep running out of stamina in the original Diablo 2. I'm not sure whose idea it was to put that into the game, even in 1996. So in terms of content then, as I'm aware anyway, the mod currently includes the majority of Act 1. Obviously there's still quite a bit more work to be done. But certainly the initial starting quests, which I've played through, have been implemented and are definitely playable. There are a couple of things I want to note. First of all, the difficulty of the game is much higher than it was in the original Diablo 2. Even though I'm playing on normal mode, the first thing that I noticed when I came out of here into the wilds on my way to the Den of Evil is that the monsters weren't dying in a single hit. Now that's even more apparent when you actually enter the first dungeon. The monsters there go up in difficulty quite a bit from what we're seeing out here at the moment outside. So just something to bear in mind, okay? It is actually a good idea to grind a level or two before you actually make your way into the Den of Evil. Otherwise you could very easily be destroyed. Something I forgot about, having played Diablo 3 more recently than Diablo 2. But I want to point out is that the town portals do not automatically take you back to town. You actually have to enter them once you've created them. So as you progress through the game, it is important to keep a town portal open. Otherwise, you are going to be doing the lengthy corpse runs if you die and are spawned back at the rogue encampment. And unlike the original Diablo 2, town portals aren't actually scrolls. But in that sense, they work more like the Diablo 3 town portal. It's just a button on your hotbar that you can click and just summon a town portal whenever you would like to do so. There's actually no inventory item and you can't run out of them. As far as I can tell anyway, you can't run out. You can just cast it whenever you want to. Now those numbers that you can see above the action bar there, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, you'll notice the ones in red, 2 to 7 are in green. They are the potion hotbar. Okay, the reason number 1 is in red is because that's holding a healing potion. 2 to 7 are empty, so they're just in green. If I was holding a mana potion, then whichever slot that's in would be coloured blue. So just in case you're wondering what that is, that's all it's about. Okay, that's your potion hotbar. You did have that in the original Diablo 2 as part of the belt. Okay, you could equip belts and that would determine how many potions you could hold. And that system was really scrapped with D3 to tell you the truth, but it's made a bit of a comeback of course with this Diablo 2 mod. The experience numbers are a little bit strange. Basically I think you just want to ignore the point, the 0 point, and just take it as you know, hundreds and thousands, and I think the numbers are pretty close to the original game. One thing that is a little bit jarring I find is the map. In the original Diablo 2 you would have an overlay map, and it was quite intuitive actually. I pretty much had it up full time, since you could see the area unfold as you explored. The fog of war would be lifted, and you know, you could see your previous locations that you'd visited, and it made it so you didn't really get lost in the game. But whatever this map's about here doesn't really help you in any way, unfortunately. It does show you where there's groups of enemies. You have these faces and that located on it, but not all groups of enemies are pointed out by those icons, I should add. Now, whether that's just because the map's a work in progress for this mod, or it's just a limitation of the StarCraft 2 engine, I'm not sure. But hopefully it's something that can be improved upon as the mod develops. One of the big changes that Diablo 3 brought about over the previous Diablo titles was just how the skill system was completely reworked. There were no skill trees anymore. You could literally switch builds on the fly, and that wasn't the case in Diablo 2. And I have to say, playing this mod reminds me just how much I loved the Diablo 2 skill system. Having to actually choose your choices wisely, because you couldn't just unlock all the skills. Now, I think later on in the patch cycle of D2, they did bring about a change where you could, for enormous amounts of gold anyway, respec your character, but that wasn't always the case. But as far as I can tell, that skill system from D2 and that stat system has literally just been brought straight over into the mod here. And it's not perfect yet. There's obviously still work to be done. Don't forget, guys, this is beta, and the amount that has been done here, I'm not criticising this in any way. The amount that has been done here is simply astounding. The fact that we have a playable version of Diablo 2 here in StarCraft 2, and it is absolutely playable, is you know, something that I'm very impressed by. But the skill system still has a lot of work to be done. That's pretty clear. So one of the things I used to like to do when I started a new class with D2 was just have a look through the skill tree, see what abilities I'll be able to unlock later on as I level up and get the skill points. But you can't check skills out, unfortunately, in the mod that you don't have the skill points to learn. At least I've not been able to find a way of doing that. And also the skills, it seems, have been rebalanced. In fact, there's been a lot of rebalancing. I already mentioned the difficulties being adjusted. It's a lot harder, this mod is, than the original game. Enemies have more health, damage numbers are different, and that affects skills as well. So even if you're a D2 expert, there is going to have to be some research when you're, you know, investing in the skill trees and stuff as to what it is that you want to do in terms of build and whatnot, because it is going to work a little bit differently than the original game. And you can tell those balance changes are going to impact the game because, well, for example, if I play through the first quest on Diablo 2, it takes me about 10 minutes to get to, clear the Den of Evil, head back to town, to the encampment and hand that quest in. But it takes me a good half an hour. I've tried with 2 characters now here in the mod to make my way to the Den of Evil, clear all the enemies out within, and then hand that quest in. So it's a much meatier version of Diablo 2, I think, which is definitely a good thing. It's not an exact clone of the original game. Don't get me wrong, the attention to detail is incredible, it really is. But it's not an exact clone in that sense because of how the balance changes have implemented the gameplay. Now, like in Diablo 2, you will be assigning your skills to the F keys on the keyboard, okay, F1 through to F12. But the way you assign those keys is a little bit different. It's a little bit awkward at the moment. I'm assuming it is just a work in progress. The next time I open up with a new skill point, I will show you how it works. But combine that with the fact, as I mentioned, that you cannot assign anything, from what I can tell anyway, to the left mouse button. You will have to just play around a little bit with getting used to the controls, even if you know how to play Diablo 2 if you're a veteran of that particular game. And I'm loving the way that all the enemies here are just so reminiscent of their Diablo 2 counterparts. You know, the person that made this e-god is obviously a huge fan of the original game because the attention to detail here is absolutely astounding. So you've got these fallen mobs and these walking undead corpses which are just littering the Den of Evil. I mean, just the name of this place, isn't it? It's a little bit cliche for sure, but you know what you're going to get from it. And I like the way that the systems worked in D2 also work in this particular mod. For example, leveling up fully restores your health and your mana. And speaking of mana, you might remember from the original game as well. I can't help, by the way, but compare the mod to the original game. I'm sorry if that's annoying you, but I think it's very natural to do that, isn't it? But mana is going to expire very, very quickly, especially early on when it's such a low number. So if you don't want to worry too much about mana, then I'd focus on a class like the Necromancer, like I'm playing now, since you can just summon skeletons and they will do the work for you without using any more mana after their summon. But if you're going to play a class like the Sorceress, which I did play a little bit of, then you are going to be constantly porting back to town to either purchase potions or to speak to Kadala in order to heal up. And I'm not saying that adjustments aren't going to be made as the patches and updates come out for this mod, but that was definitely a feature of the original D2 as well. I do remember teleporting or town portaling back to the rogue encampment on many occasions in order to restore my mana and health. It was often cheaper and usually the only option of restoring health once you'd ran out of potions. Having locked treasures that require keys that randomly drop from enemies was always something that annoyed me in the original game. But hey, I'm glad to see that it's been brought across. It does create that more authentic experience. One little bit of feedback I would perhaps give is that it would be nice if the keys that open these chests dropped a little bit more frequently. And the reason for that is these chests... Hey, look, we died. I told you this place was hard. These chests are quite frequently spawning, but I think I was maybe getting about 1 key every 35 to 40 minutes of play, which isn't really a lot. So, it's a good job I opened that town portal. Had I not done so, then I would have been running all the way back to this location from the rogue encampment. So just remember to keep those portals open at all times, since they kind of act like a checkpoint, just as they did with the original game. With the advantage, as I mentioned, of not actually using an item that expires from your inventory. In the original D2, once you died and returned to your body, you could recover your corpse for, I think, 75% of the experience that you'd lost, along with some of the items and gold that was left. I can't seem to find a way of clicking the tombstone here, though, unfortunately. So I'm not sure whether that's something that will be implemented later, or if it's just not going to be part of this particular mod. Now, I was talking about the difficulty earlier, and I'm not sure if this was an accidental thing or something that's been done on purpose. But it seems that this particular dungeon, the Den of Evil, gets harder and harder as you progress through it. The monsters seem to clump up in larger amounts, and the creatures that you encounter, especially later on, are a lot tougher than the ones you encounter from the start as well. So it is actually important just to make sure you are killing everything. You do need to for this quest anyway, but I'm assuming it's going to be the same kind of thing going through the rest of the game. You do need to be killing everything to make sure that you're staying on top of your levels. I think if you start falling far behind, then things are going to get very tricky indeed. And hopefully there will be some way of allowing the player to left click on an enemy and to run to them before actually attacking. That would be such a huge quality of life change going forward, I think, because so often I find myself hitting thin air because I'm not quite in melee range of the character, such as there, for example. And you look like you're close enough, but you're not. You do have to get right in the face of the creature before you attack. And it seems like a small thing, really, but I think it would make a big difference. A good quality of life adjustment if that could be fixed. And we have this new enemy type now that you just saw me killing. These are called Wendigos. I think they were called Gargantuans in the original Diablo 2. I'm not sure why the name's been changed for this particular mod. I think they were called Wendigos in Act 5, so maybe it's just the way that the files are working, I'm not sure. But they do have a lot of health, as you can see. 85 health points is quite a bit when you're only doing 4 damage or so per hit. And my skeletons are dying quite quickly as well. So it would be nice to get another level or so before we reach the boss at the end of this particular dungeon. And as with the original D2, because you have the shaman here resurrecting the fallen, it is a little bit annoying at times when you think you've cleared out the dungeon only to find that you haven't, and you do need to backtrack because some of those previous fallen that you killed have been resurrected. The good thing is, if you press Q, I think it is, to bring up the quest log, you can see once you've almost cleared out the place how many enemies you've got left. So at least you know how many you're looking for, even though not exactly where they're going to be located. And this might sound like a strange thing to say. I want to try and word it correctly because it's really hard to put into words what it is I'm going to try and say here. But as I was playing through this mod, there were times, quite frequently as well, that I wasn't conscious I was playing StarCraft 2. That I wasn't conscious I was playing a modded version of D2. I was literally just feeling like I was playing the original game. Now, I didn't consciously think to myself, I'm playing D2, this isn't StarCraft 2. But I did kind of get lost in the moment of playing the game. And for the briefest of times, I did forget I was actually playing the mod. And, just assumed I was playing the game. Which is why I kept falling back into that trap of left-clicking on enemies when I wasn't close to them. Because it was just part of the habit more than anything else, I think. But I think it shows a testament of just how well made this mod actually is, that you definitely have that D2 vibe, that D2 feel as you play the game. And I've already talked about difficulty, but as we come to the end of the Den of Evil here, one thing I will mention is there is a substantial difficulty spike with the final boss of this place, Corpse Fire. I think his name is going off memory, and that is just the name of the boss in the original game as well. But mainly because even in the original game, Corpse Fire did quite a bit of damage you had to avoid in order to stay alive. But because the health total seemed to be so much higher here in the Curse of Tristram over the original game, it's going to take a lot of town visits to keep replenishing health and mana in order to get this guy down. So I do recommend definitely keeping a town portal open at all times, because it's very possible you are going to die and you are in for quite a lengthy battle. But it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun, so I'm a big fan of it. One minor change over the original game, which didn't bother me at first, but having gone back to town many, many times, does start to get a little bit annoying, is the fact that when you speak to Kadali, your health isn't instantly replenished as your mana is. There is a kind of wait as it slowly increases back to full. So it's fine when you're just making the odd visit back. But then at times when you're fighting a tough group of enemies, or a boss, as in this case, and have to keep making frequent return visits, it can get, as I say, just a little bit irritating. There is one bug as well that I just want to talk about briefly here. I'm not sure if this is going to affect all pet classes, but it does seem to affect the Necromancer. You might have already seen this as you've been watching the gameplay on this video, but unfortunately there does seem to be this bug, and I would even say it's game breaking, that stops your minions from attacking the enemy. I'm not sure why it happens. It's really frustrating, but you'll summon your minions out, that'll hit the enemy a few times, but then as you start to move to other enemies, they just won't do anything. They'll either run into walls and just stay there on the spot, or they'll just completely flat out ignore the enemies that you're attacking. And it seems the only way to fix it is by killing more enemies and then resummoning your skeletons to fight again. But they can literally break again, like, you know, within a few seconds. So hopefully this is something that's going to be fixed. The Necromancer class is perhaps my favourite class in D2. It wasn't necessarily the strongest, but I just loved having an army at my side. So I was a little bit sad to see that it wasn't working as I was hoping it would do in the Curse of Tristram. But still, it was working enough to manage to clear out at least the first quest, which is as far as we get with this particular video. I'm loving these effects as well that Corpse Fire is giving off. That firing that's pulsating around him. It's just kicking off the instinct to stay out of the fire, stay away, don't get into melee range when that's, you know, happening. But that reminds me of one other tip I want to share with you actually if you're going to play through this mod. I would advise you not to worry about putting points into strength and dex. Yes, you'd like to be able to equip weapons and items that require those higher values, but you're much better off, in my opinion, just pumping everything into vitality. The extra life that you get is just going to be absolutely invaluable. I've got almost double the life that I started with. In fact, over double the life, I think, now, that I started with. And I just couldn't imagine having, you know, not put any points into vitality. I'd be, well, I'd just constantly either be dead or just living in the rogue encampment healing. And I'm going back frequently enough as it is. And I suspect that's going to be the same for pretty much any class that you choose to play. Now remember as well, of course, that right now a lot of the game isn't actually here. So you won't have a great need for higher stats in like strength and dex. Now this was weird. I came back from town here having just ported away from Corpse Fire, who was almost dead. And he just vanished. I looked all over this area and I'm not sure what happened, but he just wasn't present at all. I was quite worried I was going to have to give up and try this quest again, but fortunately I did come across him in the end. He'd gone way back further into the previous part of the dungeon, so I'm not sure what happened there, but it seemed to be a bug of some kind. And there he goes. So not quite the loot explosion you get from the original game, although that tended to only be potions and stuff anyway. But it's not just about killing Corpse Fire. You do need to go ahead and clear out every other creature in the dungeon as well. And don't forget you can check your quest log by pressing Q if you want to go ahead and see how many enemies are left to kill. But that's pretty much going to bring us to the end of this video. So as I say, you can try this yourselves. You don't have to pay anything. Just download the Battle.net client if you haven't already from the Battle.net website and set up a free account. Download StarCraft 2. By the way, StarCraft 2 in its own right is a great game to play if you haven't already. The whole of the single player campaign for the original game, you can play through all of that without having to pay anything, and it's a lot of fun. But more importantly, pertinent for today's particular video, is that once you've downloaded the StarCraft 2 game, you can then go ahead over to the arcade and play this particular mod, The Curse of Tristram. One thing I would note is don't try and add any AI characters when you create a game using The Curse of Tristram. I did try that. I thought maybe we could have some AI running around with us and helping us, but it seems to bug out. You can't actually pick up the first quest if you do that. You can, however, I've not tried this, play multiplayer, so you're welcome to join a public game of The Curse of Tristram, and you can play them with up to 3 other people, or you can invite friends if you want to do so privately. But there we have it. The first quest is complete. The Den of Evil is cleansed. I guess it's what? The Den of, well, neutralness now, perhaps. So it's not really the Den of good, is it? There's going to be blood everywhere for starters. But I hope this has given you a good taste of the mod. And as I said at the start, and as you can hopefully see now, it's definitely a playable experience. So I just want to give a thanks again to eGod for creating this mod. And I'm very excited to see where it's going to go from here. If you want to show eGod your support, by the way, then he does have a Patreon page set up. So try the mod out, play it, see what you think of it, and if you want to support him that way, then you are able to do so. But thanks for stopping by and checking out my video. I hope you've enjoyed watching. If you have, please don't forget to leave a like and be subscribed to the Fuzzfinger Gaming YouTube channel for more content in the future. So this is probably a one-off, this video, for this particular game, but let me know what you guys think, and maybe we can do some more videos on it in the future if you want to see more once updates and that come out and changes are made. But that's it for me for today, guys, so thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next time.
It will take more than just killing a few beasts in the wilderness to earn my trust. My rogue scouts have just reported an abomination in the monastery graveyard. Apparently, undead Andariel is not content to take only our living. Bloodraven, one of our finest captains in the battle against Diablo at Tristram, was also one of the first to be corrupted by Andariel. Now you'll find her in the monastery graveyard, raising our dead as zombies. We cannot abide this defilement. If you are truly our ally, you will help us destroy her.